90-day nightmare. Yara in hospital. What happened to Jovi's wife? It started like an ordinary day for Yara, quiet, simple, filled with her usual smile that everyone around her loved. But behind that soft smile, there was a silent pain she never spoke about. For days she had been feeling weak, exhausted, and restless, yet she kept moving, believing it was nothing serious. Those who knew her would say, "Yara never complains." But this time something was different. Her hands would tremble slightly. Her breath would grow shallow after every small task. Her husband watched her closely, trying to hide the worry in his eyes. The children noticed it too, the way she would pause mid-sentence, press her hand against her chest, and force a smile as if everything was fine. No one wanted to believe that something was wrong. By evening, Yara's condition began to change. Her skin turned pale and her voice grew faint. The warmth that always surrounded her began to fade. Still, she tried to comfort everyone around her, whispering softly, "Don't worry, I'm fine." But those words trembled like a fragile promise breaking under the weight of fear. When night came, her body gave in. She couldn't stand anymore. The family gathered around her, panic flooding the room. Every second felt heavier than the last. Her husband's trembling hands reached for the phone, calling for help, his voice breaking between words. The children cried silently, their faces pressed against her arms. And then within moments that felt like forever, Yara was rushed to the hospital. The streets blurred past under flashing lights. Her breathing grew slower, her heart faint but still fighting. The family sat in silence, praying, crying, hoping that somehow the morning would bring her smile back. The hospital lights glimmered cold and distant as Yara was wheeled through the long corridor. Her family followed behind, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness of the night. Every sound felt louder, the beeping machines, the hurried whispers of nurses, the rustle of papers. But for Yara's family, everything blurred into one thing: fear. The doctors took her in, the doors closed, and the waiting began. Those first few minutes felt like a lifetime. Her husband sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the red light above the operation room door. The children huddled together, tears quietly tracing their faces. No one spoke, they couldn't. The silence said everything words never could. Hours passed, but time had lost meaning. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. The sound of heart monitors came and went, and with every passing second, hope wavered like a candle in the wind. Her mother whispered prayers under her breath, her voice trembling as she repeated the same words again and again, as if saying them enough could change fate itself. Inside the room, Yara lay surrounded by machines and quiet urgency. The doctors fought to stabilize her heartbeat, their faces tight with focus and worry. Her pulse would rise, then fall again, a fragile rhythm that mirrored the heartbeat of everyone waiting outside. Messages began to pour in from friends, from people who loved her, who couldn't believe what was happening. Social media filled with her pictures, her laughter, her moments of joy, all reminders of how full of life she had always been. People prayed across cities and countries, sending words of strength to a woman who had touched hearts without even trying. The family sat together, holding each other, not knowing what tomorrow would bring. Her husband stared at the floor, replaying every memory, her laughter in the morning, the way she used to hum while cooking, the softness of her hand when she held his. He would have given anything just to hear her say his name again. As dawn approached, the doctor finally stepped out, his eyes tired but gentle. He spoke quietly, and though his words were calm, the fear in his face said more than anything he could say. Yara's condition was critical. They were doing everything possible, but she needed strength, her body was fighting, and it was a fight between hope and time. The sun rose slowly that morning, but it brought no light for the ones sitting in that waiting room. It was the longest night they had ever lived, and it still wasn't over. The hours turned into days, and the hospital became their world. The walls that once felt unfamiliar were now witnesses to every tear, every silent prayer, every breath of fear that passed through Yara's family. They sat in the waiting area, their hearts beating in sync with the distant rhythm of the monitor that kept her alive. Yara lay in the ICU, surrounded by tubes and quiet machines that hummed like fragile threads between life and loss. Her body was weak, but her spirit still lingered, as if somewhere deep inside, she was still fighting to return to the people she loved. Her husband hadn't left the hospital once. He sat by the window, staring out at the city lights that faded into the morning fog. Every time a nurse passed by, he would look up, searching for hope in their expression, but all he saw was sympathy, the kind that breaks you silently. The children drew small hearts on pieces of paper, leaving them near her bed, whispering promises that she'd come home soon. The doctors did everything they could. They changed medications, adjusted machines, whispered updates in careful tones, but sometimes even science trembles before the power of fate. They said Yara's condition was unstable. Those words echoed in everyone's mind, heavy and sharp, refusing to fade. Outside the hospital, people began lighting candles. Strangers who had followed her story, who had seen her smile through screens and pictures, now stood together whispering prayers. The whole community seemed to breathe for her, hoping that somehow their faith would find its way to her heart. Inside, her mother held a small cross in her hands, her lips moving in constant prayer. Her father, once a strong man, now broke down quietly, unable to hide the pain anymore. Her husband placed his hand on Yara's motionless fingers and whispered things that only she could hear, words that were half love, half desperation. Every beep from the monitor became a language of its own, a signal of life, a pulse of hope. But sometimes it would slow and everyone would freeze, afraid to even breathe. The nurses rushed in, doctors followed, and the family stood helpless outside the glass door, watching the battle between medicine and miracle. Hours passed like this, waves of panic and silence. Each minute was heavier than the last. And yet, in the middle of it all, there was something unexplainable, a quiet belief that she could still wake up. Because Yara had always been strong. She had always found a way back, no matter how hard life tried to bring her down. As night fell again, the hospital grew quiet. Only the sound of the machines and the faint whispers of nurses filled the air. Her family sat together, exhausted, eyes swollen from crying, hearts refusing to give up. And somewhere inside that dimly lit room, Yara's heart continued to beat, weak, trembling but alive. The fourth night arrived heavy with silence. The family had stopped counting the hours. Every tick of the clock was another reminder that Yara was still between two worlds, one filled with the people who loved her, and another wrapped in quiet light, pulling her away. Doctors came and went, their faces calm but their eyes full of worry. They spoke softly, using words that no one wanted to hear. Critical, infection, low response. Each term felt like a knife, and yet the family held on, refusing to let go of hope. They believed that somehow, Yara could still feel their prayers, that she could still hear their voices calling her name. Inside the ICU, the air felt cold. The sound of the heart monitor filled the room, its steady rhythm slowing from time to time, making everyone's breath catch. Nurses adjusted her wiped her forehead, and whispered small encouragements that they weren't sure she could hear. But maybe she could, maybe somewhere deep inside her heart still recognized love. Her husband sat outside the glass wall, unmoving. His hands were clasped tightly together, his head bowed. The world outside didn't exist anymore. No sky, no sound, no tomorrow. Just that one room where everything that mattered was fading. Her mother held his shoulder, whispering the same prayer over and over again, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. Then, in the early hours of dawn, the machines began to change rhythm. Nurses rushed in, and within seconds, doctors followed. The red light flashed, alarms echoed down the corridor, and everything turned into a blur of movement and sound. Her family stood frozen, watching through the glass, their hearts breaking with every passing second. No one spoke, but everyone knew what that alarm meant. It was the sound of life slipping away, of time running out. Her husband's knees gave out as he whispered her name under his breath. The children cried silently, clinging to their grandmother. The doctors worked quickly, their voices urgent, their hands steady, fighting to bring her back, fighting against the quiet that was slowly taking over the room. Minutes felt like hours. The line on the monitor flattened for a moment, and then, miraculously, a small beat returned. One faint pulse. Then another. It was weak, fragile, but it was there. Yara's heart was still fighting. The doctors continued, their faces showing both exhaustion and relief. When the noise finally settled, one of the nurses came out, her eyes wet but smiling softly. "She's still with us," she whispered. And in that moment, the waiting room filled with silent tears. Tears of hope, of gratitude, of disbelief. The family held each other tightly, whispering thanks into the air. For the first time in days, a small flicker of light broke through the darkness. Yara was not gone. She had chosen to stay, to fight a little longer. The night that began with fear ended with a fragile kind of hope. It wasn't over, but for now she was still breathing. And sometimes that's enough. Morning came slowly, soft light spilling through the hospital windows, touching faces that had not seen sleep for days. The air felt lighter than before, yet heavy with exhaustion and prayer. Yara was still there, still breathing. Every rise and fall of her chest was a quiet miracle, a rhythm that her family had learned to live by. The doctors said she had passed the most dangerous stage. Her body was weak, but her heartbeat had found its strength again. The infection that had almost taken her was beginning to fade. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the doctors smiled. It wasn't a smile of certainty, but one of hope, the kind that comes after walking through darkness and finally seeing a glimpse of light. Her husband sat beside her, his eyes red but shining. He held her hand carefully, as though it might break if he held it too tightly. Her fingers, once cold and still, now moved slightly, just enough to remind him that she was coming back. He whispered her name, and though her lips didn't move, a single tear slid down her cheek. It was the smallest movement, but to him it felt like the world had started again. The family gathered around, whispering prayers of thanks. The children smiled through their tears, their drawings still taped near her bed. Colorful hearts and shaky letters spelling out love. For days they had lived in fear. Now they lived in gratitude. Outside the hospital, people who had prayed for Yara sent their blessings. Messages poured in, not of pity but of strength, of admiration for the woman who had fought so bravely against the edge of loss. Her story had become more than just a struggle. It had become a reminder of how fragile and beautiful life really is. By evening, the doctor came once more, his voice calm and kind. He said she would need time, weeks, maybe months, but she would recover. And in that simple sentence, the weight of endless nights finally lifted. Her husband stepped outside and looked at the sky. The sun was setting, painting everything in gold and orange, the same colors Yara had always loved. He closed his eyes, whispered a prayer, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Inside, Yara rested quietly, surrounded by love. The machine still beeped softly, but now that sound felt different. It wasn't fear anymore, it was life. And so, after all the pain, all the waiting, and all the tears, there came a morning where hope finally won.